it just, to me, it just wasn't viable anymore. What I needed was that slow pace of life, and I needed to feel safe. And then I walked outside and I started sobbing uncontrollably.
All right, we're talking about a place you may not have even considered, that by the time we're finished, you may be ready to book your flight to. We're talking about Croatia. Welcome to Exodus Summit. We help Black women take sabbaticals and career breaks abroad. We help Black women move abroad. We help Black women bop around. If you're interested in leaving the country, if you're interested in going someplace new, in particular, if you're a person who has some health concerns that mean that you need to take extra considerations, this channel, this video is for you. Welcome. My name is Stephanie Perry. I'm one of the co-founders of Exodus Summit. Please meet Rashida Dow.
Hello, I am Rashida Dow, the other co-founder of Exodus Summit, and I am very excited to bring today our guest to the stage, Kerry, who has had an interesting experience in Europe after having an interesting experience in the US. So we're very excited to have Kerry with us today. Kerry, thank you for joining us and for being here to share your story with our audience.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies. I am so glad to be here. And yes, both of you were really instrumental in me escaping the US and coming abroad, and my health has been improving tremendously. So I'm grateful for that.
Great. All right. We love to get the credit. So introduce yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Kerry. I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I moved to Dallas in about 2007, and I was living out there for many years. Now, I have a background as a professional dancer. I was a backup dancer way back in the 90s. Woohoo! And then I became a teacher and choreographer. I was super healthy, super energetic, could do a million things, push through. And then I was poisoned by toxic mold, and it was in my HVAC in the apartment that I was renting in Dallas. And it was very severe poisoning. So it was about a year before I even figured out what was going on, but it basically wrecked my life. I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't teach anymore. It actually gave me a minor traumatic brain injury from breathing in all of that toxic mold. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And it's a trip. So basically I had to pivot and start my life all over again. But this time I was extremely ill, so I could barely function. Yeah. So I had to move around from place to place in Dallas. And as I was trying to recover, I just found that it was so hard in a city where there wasn't a lot of fresh air. It's full of a lot of contaminants. I mean, we all know the first of all, the US food supply.
Yeah.
That's a hot mess. And what happened is the mold made me allergic to all dairy, all gluten, all wheat products. And then it also made me allergic to all of the pollen, all of the dust, the ozone layer. So basically sensitizes you to everything, including chemicals. And so in order for me to heal, I knew that I had to leave the US. Okay. And I needed to find a way out. And by now I had moved around trying to find a cleaner space, because you can imagine I didn't want to live anywhere with dirty HVACs anymore, because I couldn't tolerate it and I could never heal. And then I found you guys online, started listening to you. I'd lived in Europe many years ago when I was dancing, but it'd been so long since I traveled, and having been poisoned for so long, I didn't really feel like I had what it took anymore. But listening to you ladies and the other ladies inspire me, I was just like, this is it. So basically, I knew that I had to get out. So at that point, it was COVID. I was working remotely for a company. I had pivoted totally and started working in offices. And they let me work remotely for good because of my health issues. Obviously, during COVID, I had autoimmune issues now from the mold poisoning. So I ended up listening to you, Stephanie, and Libria Jones. And I remember her saying, when you were talking to her about, remote work, I remember her saying to all of us, well, just ask your job if you can leave the country. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I did. I asked and they said yes. And so that was 2021. And then I spent a good 7 months preparing. Now, mind you, when I was initially looking, Croatia was not number one on my list.
Okay.
So I had actually looked at Portugal. I had looked at Spain. There were a lot of different reasons that some of these other places didn't work. For example, Spain had drafted their digital nomad visa, but they hadn't released it yet by the time that I wanted to go. And so then I looked at Portugal, and Portugal, I think by that point, so many people had been applying for that D7 visa, because that's all they had at the time. They didn't have the digital nomad visa that they have now, right, for Portugal, but they had the D7. And then the amount of savings that they wanted you to have in the bank account in order for you to be able to go to the Portugal one, like I didn't have that, because I was just everything. By the way, mold poisoning, you're paying out of pocket for everything. Nothing's covered by insurance. But because, yeah, you have to go to all the holistic doctors. You can't, nobody really treats it. Yeah, it's not really seen as anything that, you know, is recognized in normal medicine. So now I had to leave the country. I knew I wanted Europe specifically because I knew their food supply was going to be something that I could handle. I knew that I'd be able to eat the wheat. I knew that I wouldn't be allergic to the dairy. I knew it. I'd spent years healing my gut in the US, and I still couldn't eat the organic wheat or dairy in the US, right? I still couldn't tolerate it. So I decided to try to hone in, and then Croatia offered their digital nomad visa. And I happened to meet the requirements. It was one of the lower thresholds as far as the income requirements. So that was great. And then also, I think one of the things a lot of people don't realize, it's for me, I think it's one of the only places in Europe with the nomad visa where I don't pay tax to Croatia and the US.
Okay. Important.
Because in Spain, you do, right? So that was another plus. And even though I'd never been here before, I'd never traveled to Croatia, I was like, let's do it. So I sold everything that I had, like everything, full on liquidation, sold my car, bribed my best friend who doesn't like cats. I had to bribe her to fly with me so that she could take my second cat. I took my 2 cats in cabin and made it. And guys, day one, arriving in Frankfurt Airport, ate my first sandwich with mozzarella cheese. And from there on, I've been eating everything and anything. So 0 reactions to the food in Europe. I mean, that was the first huge leap for me with health. So
amazing. Amazing. Now, as someone who has autoimmune issues too and can't eat gluten or dairy or any of those things, I don't eat them anywhere in the world. So why were you confident that when you went to Europe, it would be different for you?
Oh, great question. So one of the reasons is when I had lived in Europe prior, so many years late, back in the 90s, 2000s, I had lived there for 7 years, actually. I'd lived in Rome and London and in Vienna. And I remember the food just being very different. I had no allergies back then, but I just remember feeling energized. And then ever since then, since I do really love Europe in general, you know, the architecture and, you know, a lot of the art, I've stayed adrift, and I've really just been studying what they do to their foods versus what we do. And so when I had my gluten intolerance, right, I immediately started researching, and I knew that they not only didn't put a lot of stuff in their foods, but they had a really strict ban on the use of Monsanto, the Roundup, the glyphosate, which they put on a lot of our wheat products in the US. And I also, I did do a test. So when I was living in Dallas, I healed my gut enough to the point to where I was like, I know that I can handle gluten now, but it has to be from a really good source. And one of the things people may not know, and I learned, was that a lot of the wheat produced in Europe just has less of a gluten count. So it's less glutinous than the ones in the US.
Okay.
To start with. So what I did is I went to Trader Joe's, where I knew they had frozen pizza that was made in Italy. And I bought a frozen pizza. So the cheese and the dairy, everything the cheese and the wheat was coming from Italy, and I was able to eat it.
Smart.
So I was like, I'm out. I need to eat.
Okay.
Guys, it was like 6 years
Yes.
I didn't eat anything that I wanted to eat. That's a long time.
That's right. That's right. A lot of people, there are people who would say, well, this is just how it is in the US and I'm just going to stay here. But you were like, this is how it is in the US. And so I need to remove myself out of this place. Do you think, I know it's hard to play what if, but do you think that if you'd never lived abroad before, do you think that you would have come to the same conclusion? If you had not lived in Rome and Vienna and London previously, do you think you still would have found a way to remove yourself? Or do you think that that was a super helpful, the reason?
Actually, honestly, I think I would have left anyway, because I think that my personality is such that I'm adventurous and I'll do what it takes to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And I just feel like listening to other people also confirm that they had different experiences. Even when they go to Mexico or some other places, people have allergies to like certain vegetables, don't have them in other countries, So no, I do think that I would have left anyway. I don't know that I would have tried the food right away. I may not have been as brave to do that and jump in, but yeah. And there's another element, can I share with you about the healing process that's been really remarkable, is that when you have mold illness and you're taking a lot of natural supplements, because that's really all you can do. You're trying to detox, you're trying to heal the damage from the mold. And then you're also trying to build up your immune system, right? Well, I was spending hundreds of dollars and I could tell, and I think it's because I'd been a professional dancer, so I knew my body really well, but I could tell that my environment was just not conducive to that. So by the time I had listened to you in 2021, I could only go for a walk for 15 minutes. That's how weak my body was. Couldn't dance, couldn't exercise, couldn't do anything. And so if I went for a walk in my little apartment community, these like nice new builds that they have, by this point, I have to rent a brand new apartment in Dallas, which was like, $1,400, something insane to do on your own, right? And it's the only way that I could feel safe and stay healthy. But then I'm walking around this little community and they spray it with pesticides.
Yeah.
Like crazy. So at that point, you're extra sensitive to that too, right? So everything is this kind of assault to you, whether or not it's not just in your head, it's literally causing inflammation. And mold poisoning it's defined as chronic inflammatory response syndrome.
Okay.
So you have to learn to manage your inflammatory response. Well, clearly I wasn't going to be able to do it there. So when I arrived here, I had already kind of understood that they just don't spray pesticides everywhere, right? They're a lot more old fashioned in that. So that I started walking around, I started getting better, found a great product that I'm taking here. It's from the UK. It's available everywhere. But if I'd taken it in Dallas, I wouldn't have seen the effects, guys. Now I can go hiking for an hour, 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
So it's a complete change. You know what I mean? It's huge. So I'm so grateful. And I am really happy that I came here now. It's not perfect. No place is perfect. There are other challenges, but when you compare the two, yeah, it's been really a blessing.
All right. Well, let's talk about your life there now. How long have you been in Croatia?
So I've been here 2.5 years.
Okay. And what part of the country are you in?
I'm in Split, which is on the coast. Yeah, it's on the Dalmatian coast, directly across from Italy.
Okay. What's life like for you in Split?
Well, life in Split is really slow and mellow. I love it for that reason. So you can get up, you can walk everywhere. I think that's the other part of the amazing thing for our health. We spend so much time sitting and then in our cars in the US, and coming here, I was forced to actually go out and go for a walk. So typical day for me now that I can hike is I will go out in the mornings and walk 20 minutes to the coast to Marion Hill, where there's a forest. It's a pine forest with the most beautiful views, very famous touristic spot. And I can go hiking there. And I happen to now, over the summer, I started feeding some of the local cats there.
Oh.
So yeah, I started keeping a Facebook page, which I can share with y'all later. But so a lot of tourists stopped me and asked me about the cats. I love cats, and part of my healing process and some of the things that are just going on personally, I wanted to feel empowered again. And so I wanted to take care of something, that needed help. So yeah, so I feed about 15 cats a day, and that's all literally donations. People that I've met help me feed the cats, but there are about 100 cats that live up there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
I watched a YouTuber who said he divides the world between dog countries and cat countries. So you're in a cat country, right?
Cat country, yes. And it's great. And so I'll go for a walk, come back, and then on my way back, I can just take like a 15-minute detour walking into the old center, do a little shopping. You go to the bakery to get your bread if and there's like a health food store that I can go to. And then I take my walk back, and the pace of life is so much healthier for me. And so one of the things I did want to say too about when you have mold illness, it impacts your ability to handle stress because it's damaged your nervous system, right? Mm-hmm. So in the US, which we all know is hustle culture, I couldn't hustle anymore. I couldn't do it. I'd done it my whole life. And so the stress of just getting out in your car and going to the store and all of everyone in such a rush, the intensity of everyone, because everyone's got 2 and 3 jobs. You have to in the US. Mm-hmm. It was literally like taking me down. And so I also picked Croatia for that reason, because I knew that they just don't live that way here. They take their long coffee break, they choose that over, the stress. Not to say people aren't having to, try to make more money, but it's how they handle it. And that in itself has, helped me heal as well.
It's amazing.
The pictures that I've seen of Split make it look like the old world, right? So you said you're right off the coast of Italy, right across from Italy, right?
Yes.
There's water in between. And it looks a lot like you picture, if you say, I'm going to Italy, I'm going to, live a slow paced life. This looks a lot like exactly what people would picture. Maybe we'll try to throw in some video here, but it looks exactly like you think it looks. It looks
exactly. Yeah. And if you love, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it looks like a place where you cannot be in a hurry. There's cobblestone, there's steps, this is not a place built for get from point A to point B. This is a place for take your time.
Exactly. It forces you to slow down. Exactly. When you're walking around and you have amazing architecture all around you in the old center, and you stop and you take a look, and your blood pressure goes down, and everyone around you, they almost, they're taken aback if you're in a hurry, because they're not used to that. So you start to get into their groove. And there's a lot of stuff to do that I enjoy, that, again, it's just, wandering around, sitting and having a coffee with a friend, or, for example, I don't know if you're aware of this. I didn't know until I got here, but there's like 1,000 islands off of the coast here, Croatia. Mm-hmm. So, that's something that you can plan if you want. You can hop on a catamaran or a ferry and go to an island for the day. They're not all really far away. Yeah.
Go for a walk. We do know that because we happen to be interested in yacht things. So we
know. And one of us has gone yachting around Croatia before.
Oh, really? Who's done that?
Started in Split. Yeah, started in Split and spent a little yacht experience through Croatia. And I remember thinking that, like, it's not what I think of when I think of Europe, right? Like when I think of Europe, I think of like London, right? Like, because I went there a bunch for work, and it feels like it Split felt like island life, right?
Yes.
And so it's got this like old European island life. It just has this vibe of like everything's slow, everything's casual, nothing's a big deal. Nothing's a big deal. Everything will work out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, we have a place for you in this restaurant, right? Like there was never any, it was just like,
yep.
Everything felt better than I expected it to.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any negative expectations going in, but I was like, I don't know, I've never been Croatia is not a country a lot of people think about or consider, and so I didn't have really a point of reference. When I got there, I was like, no one seems to care about anything besides like what they're doing right now. Like in the very present people, very in the moment. And like I was on a tour with a Black tour company. And so there were maybe 30 of us and like a group of, I've been with that same tour company to China. And like the same number of people, when we were there, it was like this big deal of like all these Black people, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Croatia, people were like, whatever. Like, we know you have to get on a boat and go somewhere. Like there was never like a, oh, the Negroes are here, right? It was just like, it felt like it wouldn't be a hard place to be a Black person, right? And I don't know if that's true all through the country or whatever, but that's definitely how I felt in Split.
Yeah. That's been my experience. And I have a half sister who visited me here, and she's much darker than me. So I wanted to know if she had a different experience than I did, you know?
Yeah.
And so I asked her, and she said, no, she loved the fact that, you know, people might look at you like, I'm sure when you guys arrived, they were like, oh, and then they just kept going on, right? Because you're just different. You just look different for a second, but then they just keep going on. She just said, everybody minds their own business.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's so freeing. And talk about your blood pressure coming down, you know?
That's right.
That's to me what I needed. So I think that's why I really am glad that you're sharing about Croatia, because, you know, this to me is a great place to land for those who are wanting the ASAP, someplace to maybe then when you're here, think about maybe where else you want to go, because they don't offer long-term visas here. And I'm sure we can get into that in a little bit. Okay. But what I needed was that slow pace of life, and I needed to feel safe. Mm-hmm. And this place, women walk around and walk their dogs at night here right now, you know? So that I think is it's really something that I never thought about until I got here. And everything for me was about my nervous system calming down. And yes, I go for walks, and, you know, people just do their own thing. And yeah, that's really interesting that you said it, because it's true. It's like living on an island, and that's what I needed. So for people who need someplace slow, but they want to be in Europe, you know, then maybe they want to get on a flight and go to London or Paris, because those are bustling cities, and those would have been too stressful for me. Right. And more expensive. Yeah. So for me, this has just been a really good place. And it's so great to talk about it, because I can actually now appreciate it even more now that I'm thinking about, oh yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned the visa situation. So you're there, and I didn't know this. I didn't know that they didn't offer a long-term visa. So tell us how you're there legally, and and about that situation.
So Croatia offers the digital nomad visa. To them, it's called a temporary residency.
Okay.
And it has evolved ever since they released it in 2021. So it's relatively new. And basically, it allows you to stay 6 months or 12 months if you can prove that you're working remotely for another company that's based outside of Croatia. Okay. And in doing that, like I said, you avoid double taxation, which is fabulous. And when you apply for this visa, there are 3 different ways that you can do it. You can do it directly online.
Okay.
You can do it at a consulate, or you can actually do it once you're here in person.
Oh, good.
So a lot of people have done that. So that's what I did. I had already connected with a lawyer, and a really great immigration lawyer that works with people from all over. But I came here, and remember, when you arrive, you are on a regular, as an American, you have a 90-day visa stay that you have for free, meaning there's no like visa that you need or something, right? So a lot of us come here on that. Maybe you stay that first 30 days, and then you start the application process. So you get that extra month in advance. Now, when you do arrive, I want to make sure everybody knows this. You'll be staying obviously at an Airbnb or hotel. So you must register as a tourist within 3 days of your arrival. But it's usually the place you're staying has to do that for you. But if for any reason they're not, you just have to make sure that you do that. That's just standard. And then, the digital nomad visa gives you that 12 months. And what they've decided to do is they make you wait 6 months, though, in between before you can reapply for it.
Okay.
Now, how I was able to stay up until this point was that they had a different visa that we were allowed to use. It's called the prepayment of rent visa. So if someone out there is not necessarily working remotely, but they could prepay, let's say, 6 months of rent or 12 months of rent in advance. And they can also prove that they have income, maybe a pension or something coming in that I think might be around $600 or $700, but don't quote me on that because it changes. Then they can just get a contract with someone like a landlord and then get a visa on that. But it's basically, but you're not supposed to technically work when you're on that.
Okay.
But that's the same. We were able to switch between in between. Does that make sense? 1 year and then the 6 month and then the 1 year. But now they've stopped that.
Okay. But visa stopped, or the ability to
change the two. So you have to choose one or the other. Then once your visa expires, remember though, you'll have 90 days after that on a tourist. You become a tourist again.
Oh,
no.
Okay. So you don't have to leave your visas up. You can still
right away. So technically, but here's where it gets tricky though, because when I got here, Croatia was not in the Schengen in 2022. And it is now. So if you're like me and you're on a budget and I was focused on my health, I chose to use my days that I wanted to go and explore Europe. I just did Croatia because Croatia in itself is amazing. There's so much to see, right? I didn't leave the country and go to other Schengen countries. So when it came time for that one time that my visa expired last time, I had a full 90 days here, right? If you stay here and you'd visited Paris for 10 days and then maybe London for 10 days, when your visa expires, you'll only have 70 days because you spent 20 days outside, right?
Yes.
So you have to kind of calculate it that way. And then, but here's the thing, it's doable because let's say you do end up wanting to stay here and try to renew it. Well, then you would just have to leave the Schengen for 90 days. Does that make sense?
Yes. It does. I want to ask a follow-up question to that. Knowing what you know now, if you had to leave the Schengen zone for 90 days, where would you go? Pick 1 or 2 countries. Where would you go?
Yeah, great question, because I've asked that question to my local friends. You can go to Bosnia-Herzegovina, which is just about 45 minutes away. That was how the former Yugoslavia was Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia. So you can go somewhere like that. For me, however, it's just from a health perspective. I wasn't sure that would be so great because it's inland and I need the coast. You can go somewhere like Ireland.
Okay.
Ireland. I mean, it's way over there, right? Someone else had mentioned Bulgaria, but it's just basically a non-EU country.
Or listen, hop on a ferry and go to Tunisia. You're not all that far from. I guess you got to go around Italy. Go to Tunisia for me, please. I haven't been yet. Okay.
I didn't think about that. Yeah,
on my list. Yeah.
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 So, I mean, there are ways to make it work. And I think that, as Americans, this is what we know how to make things work.
Yeah. So does that mean since you don't have permanent residency and they're not going to give you permanent residency, they don't do that. Does this mean that you have very little stuff? What does your home and your space look like? How much stuff did you take with you? And what do you have to?
Great question. Yes. So I sold almost everything that I had. And then I brought I had like 3 large suitcases and then like 2 large duffel bags, extra luggage, and my 2 cats. When I got here, I was planning on renting a furnished place because that's what most of us do, right? And I'll tell you that 99% of the rentals you'll find are furnished. However, when I arrived, everything did fall apart, by the way, when I got here.
Okay.
Yeah. So remember, this was 2022. So I arrived the end of May 2022, right when things were opening up. Remember, after like all of the strict COVID rules and regulations and travel. And even though I did my due diligence, I emailed people. I had booked like an apartment hotel for my first week here. Then after that, I had booked for 1 month. I had an Airbnb, and I made sure these people understood my extreme sensitivities. There can be no mold, et cetera, et cetera. And they emailed me back, shared pictures. And when I got here, after 16 hours of travel and I was exhausted, my apartment hotel had black mold in it.
Oh,
yeah. And it had mold, like black mold on the wall by the bed. And it was just a complete nightmare. So yeah, I literally just went into, crisis mode with my friend and had to find Airbnbs. So one thing I do want to share is about housing and the timing and all of that, because I arrived at the beginning of June. Their season really starts July through September. But even at that time, if you're trying to book anything, you're going to have like a really hard time. So I kind of went through a lot. And the Airbnb I had for a month, she also had like a moldy thing going on. It was like, I wasn't expecting it. So that's why also, as a sensitive traveler, I was telling you I'm starting my channel because I really want to help sensitive people understand that even when you get emails and things back and forth, if people haven't been where you're at, they may not really take you seriously as far as, you telling them what your needs are. So I've mastered that now, though. I definitely get what I need now. But long story short, I rented a space. I found a great apartment here. And when you do rent in Croatia, you're probably going to have to pay an agency fee because a lot of the people renting to foreigners are using agencies. Okay. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, where you guys have been, but here an agency fee is basically 1 month's rent just for them to list it. And I was willing to do that because the place was renovated. It's what I needed.
Okay.
For my health, right? So got everything taken care of. You sign a document with the agency telling you that they're holding that apartment for you. I'd met the owner. She was totally okay with my having cats, which is another thing, which was a blessing, right? And she lived on one of the islands. So we had scheduled time for us to go to the notary, because when you rent with a private landlord here, you're going to get that notarized. That's the legal binding contract. So you meet at the notary and you both sign it. Well, 4 days before I was to do that, she sent me a text saying that her son had found somebody else who'd pay more money per month. So I couldn't have it anymore. Yeah. So these types of things, I didn't know that I should have signed the notarized contract first. So that's my my takeaway from all of this is that if you are going to sign a contract, sign it with the landlord, not just the agency, because that way you're guaranteed that you have it. So they don't do that. And then long story short, I was blessed. I found a place that was completely unfurnished. So I furnished everything. So when you say, how much stuff do you have? Well, now I have an entire apartment full of stuff. So Yeah, needless to say, here's the thing though. The thing I want to share about all of this is, remember, I'm not able to handle a lot of stress. That was all completely stressful. And
Yeah.
yet, even doing all of that, my health is still improved because I'm not in the US.
Yes.
So even with all of those things, it just shows you how toxic the US is, because here you still get those breaks, you get the beauty, you get the fresher air, you get the better food supply, you have the slower pace of life. Yeah.
So tell us, so how long total from the time you landed until you moved into this apartment then? How long did the search take with all of the setbacks and
staying in different Airbnbs? Well, actually about 2.5 months.
okay, that's not bad.
So it wasn't bad. And I really lucked out with housing for sure.
Good.
Yeah. So, and I do want to share with everyone though, there's specific timing that you want to get down. If you are going to come to Croatia or Split specifically, and you are looking at housing, you can start your search obviously online. I would start contacting the agencies before you come here.
Okay.
And let them know. They usually don't really want to work with you until it's about 30 to 60 days before you're going to arrive.
Okay.
And then what I would do is, make sure they understand that, you're serious, and they'll tell you what they have in mind, because once May comes around, most of the apartments that are available, they'll rent out for tourists.
Mm-hmm.
They won't put those on the market for you long term, right? Then they'll turn around and put them back on the market around the end of September and October.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you can avoid being a person who needs to start the rental process in conjunction with summer tourist season, you'll have a better outcome.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Otherwise you'll want to, you'll be paying top dollar for renting Airbnbs during the summer. It's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Croatia, they have vineyards and some olive oil making facilities, some like groves and things. Have you had a chance to head out and see any of those?
No, I haven't, but I've driven past them.
Okay.
And I did visit the waterfalls. So they have two very famous, beautiful national parks that have amazing waterfalls. And I've never seen anything like it before. I mean, and I've traveled quite a bit, but it's gorgeous. Croatia is I think it is the only place in Europe that has its own natural water supply.
Oh.
Like they have so with as far as resources, they have about, I think, 6 or 7 national parks. So just driving from Zagreb, the capital, down here, you pass a lot of national parks. A lot of people take their families camping. And so again, for anybody who's wanting to heal, that the nature out here is really unspoiled. I think that's the other thing. And I think that's why also I prefer that it's kind of off the beaten path for long-term staying. In other words, people just come visit for a few days and then they leave. But when you live here and when it's off season, like now it's getting cold, but I love walking around, seeing all of the architecture and visiting places with, when it's really quiet and mellow. And then it just gives me a chance to heal.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Who would you say, because we make videos talking about places and frequently get people who are really excited about what they're hearing. And maybe they stop. This is where their research stops. So if someone is watching this and this video is where their research stops and now they're really excited about Croatia, who would you say that Split specifically would not, as a Black woman, who would it not be for?
Who would it not be for?
Yes, who would it not be for?
I don't think it would be for someone who's looking for a lot of things to do, like the museums, the kind of thing you imagine doing in Paris, right? Or like a ton of shopping. It's not going to be that kind of place. It's not going to be a place if you feel like going out to nightclubs, it's really, that's why it felt like island life to you. It's really a mellow place. You can. They do have clubs. People go to Havar Island to go to clubs. You know, they have islands for clubs. I think that it's not for perhaps somebody who's not used to slowing down. You know, people who need a lot of activity. I don't know that this would be for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you experienced traditional medical care there?
Yes, I have, actually.
Okay.
I have. So I have a story for you because I didn't realize. So I was telling you about my mold poisoning and how most of that, actually all of it, is all alternative medicine. So in the US, I really wasn't dealing with our medical system as much because of that. I had a few things that I had to do. And of course, I understood how awful our health insurance is in the US. I had an idea of how much better it was in Europe. But as someone who had been a dancer, I'd been really healthy most of my life. And then to be sick and have to use alternative doctors, I never considered myself someone who was super stressed about health insurance.
Mhm.
Then when I got here, I decided to get their health insurance. Now, when you arrive as a digital nomad, you will have to show them that you have proof of insurance before you are approved. And that can look like your average travel insurance, right?
Okay.
And so you're not required on the digital nomad visa to purchase their state insurance.
Okay.
But I decided to do it because I just wanted to have more coverage, and sure, why not? And because I am dealing with the ramifications of mold poisoning, I don't know what's, coming. I'm doing better, but I still have things I'm dealing with. So I got it. And I remember going to the local office, walking out with my little temporary card, and I knew from my local friends what it entailed, meaning that this card meant 100% coverage, ladies. And I walked out thinking, I got to remember how to get back because I'm still learning the streets and the cobblestone. I don't want to get lost. How do I get home? Right. I thought that was all I was going to be thinking. And then I walked outside and I started sobbing uncontrollably.
Yeah.
And I cried just thinking about, because I had something that people gave me dignity here. Like they treat you like a human being. Every human has value, and you are allowed to have full coverage. And that feeling, I didn't know that I had that deep inside, until I left the US. I didn't know that I'd been carrying that for so many years. And this country gives everyone health insurance. If you're unemployed, they give it to you. You pay based on how much you make, right?
Mm-hmm.
So someone like me, I was making so when I was doing that, I was making maybe 45,000 a year or something, 50. I was just working an office job. And so I was paying monthly, I paid 93 euros, which is just a little over $100. Now, mind you, to start the insurance process, to be fair to everyone here, if you are a foreigner on a residence permit, they do ask you to pay 1 year from the year to make sure you're pouring in. So you know what I mean? They'll make you pay 1 year in advance because that's fair. Everyone else did for that year that you're going to start your insurance, and then you pay monthly. But it's so worth it because for only that, everything is covered. Mm-hmm. You will not pay a dime. I met people, my landlord is a cancer survivor, all of his surgeries, all of his chemo for life. He'll take a pill for life, and it's all covered. Mm-hmm. And I've never been anywhere like that before. And so, guys, I think this is part of why so many Europeans are relaxed. I think that it's not just about their wine and their food. It's because they walk around with this pressure off of their shoulders,
Mm-hmm. That's right. So are you just getting a whole bunch of stuff checked out now?
Well, I did, yeah. I mean, I did. Now, I do want to say this, though, because this is something that I think is important. And I'm starting a channel to talk about these things because Europe is changing. And I'm sorry to say that the Americanization of Europe has begun. I don't know if you've heard this from other people living abroad, but there are two things that are going on. So all of the governments here, Spain, Portugal, they've had these really good social systems in place, but their own governments haven't necessarily taken care of their their buildings, their infrastructure, as well as the locals would like. And in the meantime, a lot of people have opened up private practices.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the locals are going private now because you'll get seen quicker because they are short-staffed. You understand? So the people in their public system are short-staffed. So it's happening in Spain. It's happening all over Europe. And so a lot of people are going private now. So if you have something that's emergency, like cancer or something, then, you obviously will be seen. But otherwise, some of the things you have to wait. But don't we wait in the US anyway, though? Like if you have, like for an appointment, it could take a couple of months, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, it's like that. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to say that I didn't know how amazing that feeling is. And I've always, to be honest, even when I lived in Europe years ago, I always envied the Europeans because I thought they were just better at living life than us.
Yeah.
I thought they were better at having a work-life balance, but now I understand it's the systems that they live in that have been giving them so much support so they can relax. Yeah.
And so it's always weird when people are like, why would you leave America? It's so great. And it's like, let's talk about, and as someone who was an immigrant to the US, I'm very, very used to that immigrant experience of like, you come to the US for a better life, and people don't frequently talk about, is that life actually better? And if it is, what else is attached to that better life? Because for a lot of us and our families and in our familial histories, it's the better life meant more income opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what comes attached to those income opportunities is typically like a shorter lifespan, right? And a lot of stress. Some other things that don't lead to ease, don't lead to your family structure being as healthy as it may have been where you come from or in other places in the world. And you don't, like you said, you don't have that support that you might have from the government in other places. So
yeah. And it's interesting that you say that because when we talk about, my health improving, because no place is perfect. And that's one of the things that's really important for me. I really want everybody to be able to make an informed decision wherever they decide to go. So they need to know the pros and the cons. And I'm not going to say there aren't challenges here. So one of the main challenges for me that ties into what you're saying, Rashida, about the stress levels, right, is the smoking.
mm-hmm.
People smoke a lot in the Mediterranean. Now, I knew that. I'd lived in Italy, but they smoke more in Croatia.
Okay.
So that's really important. If somebody is really sensitive to smoke, it's something that you just have to understand. Now, I've managed to I find a way, I know which cafes to go to. And I know, if you go into a restaurant and they serve food, no one's allowed to smoke in there, right?
Okay.
I have all of my ways, I know where to walk around, but, if I'm going to an area and I know there are people smoking, but in my apartment, the neighbors smoke. And so, I had to buy a bunch of air purifiers, but here's the deal. In the US, I was paying that $1,400 or whatever a month in a non-smoking building, and people were smoking anyway, right? They were smoking pot, and I was in Texas and it was illegal. And it, had the maintenance guys come in, open up my bathroom cabinets and are like, yep, your neighbor's smoking pot. Great. So I was being poisoned by secondhand smoke there while I was trying to heal, right? And then I had all the stress from everything. So I come over here and I'm like, yeah, the smoke isn't, ideal here, but everything else is so much easier, Okay. So I guess that's what I'm saying is that, Rashida, like what you're saying, what comes with that, maybe in the US is considered a non-smoking place, but I wasn't experiencing that. And the level of stress on in so many areas was so huge that being here, this is something I'm willing to deal with for all of the other things. And just to wrap that up with the smoking, I figured it out because I was amazed. I'm walking around. I am now sensitized to everything because of the mold, right? I'm getting better, but also to the stress in the US. We all have elevated inflammatory levels, right? So most Americans I know come here, they're sensitive to the smoke, but I've got people around me, they're 75 smoking and they don't have health issues. And I'm like, how y'all not have health issues? You've been smoking your own whole life, right? And I can't handle it. And I was like, oh yeah, because you have the healthcare, you have other benefits, their lives have been less stressful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's totally different. So am I going off on a tangent now? Sorry.
No, we're with you. We're with you. You've mentioned friends a couple of times. You mentioned going places with friends. How did you make friends there? And how is it being not a native speaker of their language?
Ooh, yes. Good question. So I'll answer that, the language first. So Croatian for me is really difficult, and I'm usually really good at picking up languages. So I do speak a few other languages, basic like Italian and French. I know a tiny bit of German. But the good news is that Croatians are taught English very early on because their country relies so much on tourism. They actually mandate that they learn English from the ages of 7 all the way through to the end of their high school. So pretty much everyone that you meet under 40 speaks English, and they're happy to speak. I have attempted to learn the language, but it is very, very challenging. And whenever I try, they're so happy. And then they say, don't worry, everybody speaks English anyway, so don't even try. They just say, don't even try. We know it's hard. Don't even try. That's their response. Google Translate comes in handy. I use that all of the time. If I need to, with someone who's older, maybe. And when I'm shopping, I take a picture to look at the ingredients. That's very helpful. And with regards to friends, it's funny because I decided when I left the US and I had literally faced my mortality because I was clinically dying. Like the poison in my body was actually killing me. I only found that out after I did blood tests and stuff, and I had to detox it out. It's really crazy. Yeah. And so when I realized how short life is, or, just faced with that, I was like, what's important to me? What is important? Getting out of the country, doing something that matters. And I love cats. So I started talking to the people who were feeding cats.
Okay.
And there happens to be this man, he's 70 years old. He feeds 40 cats in the neighborhood daily, and he's responsible for getting them all fixed, 40 of them, right? Oh. And then his daughter became like my best friend. Oh. So, she speaks English and, yeah. And then I met somebody else at the pet store, and I tends to be all around, animals now, animal lovers. So there were a lot of expats here, by the way. A lot of people live here from all over.
Yeah.
So
it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do the thing that you love to do, and that's how you make friends.
Exactly. I didn't really worry about it. Maybe that's because I was so focused on my healing. I just figured it would come. Yeah, I did.
Good.
And
do you mind sharing? You mentioned before that your rent in Dallas was $1,400 back in 2022.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing how much your rent is in Croatia?
No, I don't mind at all. Sure. So my rent now I'm going to say they use square meters here. So I think this is an 800 square foot apartment. It's considered a 3-bedroom, but 2 of the bedrooms are so tiny that I don't think we'd call it a bedroom. Okay. It's more like 1 bedroom and 2 little dens. How's that?
Okay.
And 2 bathrooms I got a great deal. It's 800 euros.
Okay.
That's about, depending on the euro, 870, 890, depends, dollars. But right now, the average price for a rental in Split, in this where I'm right next to the stadium, about a 15-minute walk from the center. It's really, they're about 1,100 to 1,400 euros. They're going up here. So they, that's the other thing too. I think you've both talked a lot about this, is that the influx of expats, a lot of locals can't afford to live in the center and stuff anymore, So that's one of the things that I've wanted to become aware of too, as I've traveled, is just sort of what's happening around me locally, and just being really respectful and saying, I'm a foreigner here, but I so respect the opportunity to be here in your space, because, and I haven't found anyone to be, angry at the, us being here. The only thing is, this is what I found when I arrived, is they assume all Americans are rich. They assume we all work for Silicon Valley and we all have 6-figure incomes.
That's right.
I'm like, nope, not me. Yeah.
That's why it's probably more helpful to go through a third party when you're renting, because if you go directly to the person and they hear that American accent, they may want to double the price,
Well, that's what I wanted to share with you. So the locals still really, they only pay maybe 500 or something if they find a place, right? Yeah, they're not paying our prices. So
Right.
Yeah, but of course, and that's the other thing, that moving here, the cost of living for me was a must. I mean, I think you're getting when I left, I literally escaped. I was like, I got to get out now or I'm not leaving the US, because rents were going up. My rent, when I left, they gave me the new lease as I was leaving, and I was like, I don't want it. And I looked and they had raised the rent $252, ladies. And we, and you're like, oh, great. I'll be living in my car soon if I stay in the US. Right?
That's right.
So to me, it just wasn't viable anymore.
We
so
can get trapped. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
we can get trapped, right? As prices rise and we have to work more, and we can get kind of trapped there if we don't, opting out is not as easy as just saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. There's got to be some intention and some steps and some effort, because it's really easy to just fall in, to just be stuck, to get trapped in.
Absolutely. And I will say this too. I do want everyone who's watching this to recognize that it's ladies like you who encouraged us to not only think about where we could go, but then also start to think about like life as something that we need to take a hold of, and not to be just at the, in the whim of everything around us. Because I think that's part of the American indoctrination of, we just stay there and we just take the abuse and we just, put up with whatever. And once I started listening to you and recognizing, oh yeah, I've got to get out, and I now pay attention. I watch global news daily because I'm watching what's going on, because I don't want to get caught. I want to be prepared, as everything is changing so rapidly. So yeah, it's been amazing. I think that we're all experiencing change. Europe is changing really fast, ladies. It's changing too. And I think I would also say that for people who come to Croatia, embracing the different cultures and the slower pace of life helps you to heal on a deep level, because you start to recognize that we've not been tuning into ourselves, right? We've been so out of touch because we're so stressed out and we're so on, doing 3,000 things a day. And I think that's part of the blessing of embracing this. So that's why I say, for me, Croatia is a great place to land, to kind of get your wits about you if you're feeling overwhelmed in the US.
Okay. That's great.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, Kerry, you've mentioned this YouTube channel that you're starting. For those who are watching in the future, tell us about your YouTube channel as if it already exists. Tell us what you cover over there and what it's
Okay,
called.
great. Yes. So my YouTube channel is called The Sensitive Traveler: Life After Toxic Mold. And I'm going to be sharing all about my life here in Croatia. I'll be talking also about the things that are going on in Europe, how that impacts our health. And I want to help others who are sensitive navigate the challenges of moving abroad. You know, when you have sensitivities, if you have autoimmune issues, any type of chronic illness, allergies, because when we travel, we have special needs. So I want to be asking, you know, some of the people who will be watching what they are experiencing, and then maybe even start a community online, because I feel like there are a lot of people that are out there, but we're all kind of, you know, hiding a little bit because we have so much going on. You know, it's a lot to travel when you have those extra special needs. Like, for example, my mold sensitivity. I know people will think this is crazy, but one of the other reasons I moved to Europe, or I basically anywhere outside of the US, is, did you realize that it's really only the US, when you're living in an apartment or a house, that you have that HVAC, that right, where you have a duct in each room, where here they have those individual heat pumps.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so much easier for someone who's got mold sensitivities to deal with, because if there's ever a roof leak, it won't get, like, mold won't go all over your house, which is what happened to me, because it got in my HVAC, right? So it goes everywhere. So I have to be extra careful and make sure that I'm not in a place where I'm breathing in a lot of mold. So everywhere I go, it's like it has to have a heat pump or something, and not an HVAC. And so, you know, I'm just wanting to, like, it's like sensitive travelers unite. Let's come together, and that way we support each other, you know, and have you know, people who understand where we're coming from. So yeah.
Good. We can't wait for you to get that channel up, get that community together, right? When you do, we'll put the link in the description of this. When she does that, friends, we'll put the link in the description of this video. If you just want to go to YouTube and look for the Sensitive Traveler channel, hopefully by the time you watch this, it is a thing that exists in the world.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
And then also, we want to invite you, friends, to work with us. Okay. If you're watching this video and you're like, oh, well, I want to go someplace. I want to leave the country too. I want to go someplace where I can prioritize my peace of mind, where I can slow down, where I can have a better quality of life. Please join us inside of the Exodus Summit Facebook group. It's a Facebook group of now 22,000 Black women who are working on this same thing, right? And then we coach Black women on their exit. Right? If you want to make your Exodus plan, if you want to get your peace out protocol together, join us in Exodus ASAP. Rashida and I coach women on this very thing so that it can be a reality for you, instead of just, oh, this was a nice video to watch. I'm going to daydream that this is my life for a while, but then I'm just going to, you know, give up. We don't want you to give up. We have these lives. In our introductions, we didn't really tell you, but Rashida lives in Mexico City, right? I haven't lived in the United States since 2015. This is something that you can work on for yourself too, and we want to help you with that. So we'll link to Exodus ASAP in the description of this video as well. It's exodusasap.com. Okay, it's pretty easy. And then we'll link to the Exodus Summit community as well, where Kerry is. We know Kerry because she's inside of the Exodus Summit Facebook group. There are women all over the world inside of the group sharing their experiences, sharing what life is like for them on the other side, sharing how they are living and healing and just like enjoying life and having joy wherever they are in the world. So you'll get more and more information inside of that community. So exodussummit.com/community is where you join us. Okay. How did we do?
I think we did it.
I think so too, Kerry. How do you feel about this? Anything you didn't say, anything we didn't ask you that you wanted to say? Anything that we didn't get?
No, I don't think so. I was just wondering. Yeah, I was like, wait, because I have like the experts here. I was like, how did I don't think my pitch for my channel didn't sound very good, did it? Did it sound?
No,
did
it sounds good. Your channel only needs to sound good to people who want that
are
information.
sensitive, right? Okay.
And
Okay.
I, as a sensitive traveler, I feel like there's a lot I could learn from you, because there's not a lot of information out there about it, right? And so, yeah, you did a great job.
Great
You
job.
guys, you know, if this is information you need, you know to tune in.
Yes,
Okay.
also understand that if you don't get this channel up and running very soon, women will be knocking down the door. Okay,
Yes.
you're kind of on the clock now.
You're on the clock, especially to get that name.
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. It just feels so awesome. I've been telling everybody about you both for a long time, the people that I know here. And I was waiting till my health came back, and I was hoping that I'd be able to communicate with you guys. And I was like, how am I ever going to tell them thank you? And
Oh, this is more than being here on our channel and sharing your message with other women who may hear themselves in your story is all the thanks we need.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you ladies ever come this way,
Yeah.
we'll
We'll be somewhere in Europe October next year. We'll be somewhere in Europe October next year. So keep your ears on. I've never been to Croatia, and I love yacht things, so maybe.
All right. Well, I don't want to keep you because I could talk to you ladies forever.
Won't be the last time. Stay present in the group, and we'll chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Bye, guys. So nice to
Bye.
meet you.
And thank you so much. Thank you.